Hello and welcome to the Embrace Your Destiny podcast. My name is Sandra Dawes and I'm your host. And if you're new to the podcast, the Embrace Your Destiny podcast is all about sharing the journeys of women who have been through a challenging time in their life, whatever that may look like, whether it's a job loss or relationship troubles. And it's about them sharing that story and how they got through it, the lessons they've learned, and advice they can give to you if you're going through something similar in your own life. And the whole purpose is to provide you with hope if you are going through a challenging time in your own life, to know that this too shall pass and there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And today's guest is Samary Polnett, and she is a children's author, speaker, and coach. She is the owner of Path to Purpose and founder of Beauty Is You, Inc. Samary is a confidence and mindset coach to moms, wives, and other nurturing women of the world. She helps her clients achieve their goals and live a more fulfilled life without guilt. Through Beauty Is You, Inc., Samary is able to empower, inspire, and educate young girls, teens, and women in the community to be more confident, connect with community leaders, and learn to find happiness within themselves. Samary is passionate about helping, motivating, and inspiring others. She is blessed to be married to a hardworking man and father, and mom to 4 amazing boys, including 1-year-old twins. In her spare time, she enjoys exploring, relaxing with yoga, being a foodie, and promoting self-love. So welcome, Samary, and thanks so much for sharing your journey with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Samary, what is the journey that you would like to share with listeners today?
So I have, in life we have several journeys, but my main journey where it has brought me to this point in my life, I must say that is absolutely my childhood and just growing up. In like the midst of chaos, and how that has put me in the place where I am now.
And so how did it all start? What was your childhood like?
So it was a little chaotic. My mom and dad, they were together. They had been together for a while. And my mom was more stable, but she also came from a very traumatic past. So she was with my father, who was kind of someone who for her, like, took her out of that trauma, but at the same time was someone who was also very abusive in different ways. So coming to that, that was kind of, we saw a lot of that growing up, my sister and I. And unfortunately, that kind of, made a huge impact in our views on how, like, we look at life and how we wanted to grow up and what we wanted to do. And it affected us negatively, but at the same time, it made us stronger in different ways, that we were able to kind of see that and see that we didn't want a life like that. So we wanted to do different.
Right.
And it was a challenge. You grow up, you think of life, you go to school, you hear of like kind of like a picture perfect, like, childhood, and people are living in like their homes and not bouncing from place to place. And my father, he was into drugs, he was selling them, he was using them, and like our house was always in and out. He was never like fully stable, and like in his mindset, he did all of this to help his family, but necessarily, like, ultimately that didn't really help us. That kind of hurt everyone as a whole. And my mom, she wasn't into any of that, but she stayed by him because she was so afraid to leave and not have something or someone to fall back on, that she felt that that was her only option during that time. So she was kind of trapped in this mindset that, like, this is the only way that I could, help my daughter successful and like give them what they need. And I know like nothing would happen to them in that sense. But it was kind of a twisted way, because that wasn't really keeping us safe all the time and like doing what we needed to do.
Right. Yeah. Because, there might have been some sense of security, but there was no stability.
Exactly. So it was this like weird stuff going on in her mind. Like, yes, I'm going to do this. And for us, for me particularly, I'm the oldest of my sister and I. So I was very upset with her the older that I got, because I felt like, you have other options. You could leave, you could find another way to raise us. And it doesn't have to be like a man being in the picture and be part of our family. I just was very upset and angry with her. But that also fueled what I wanted to do in life. Like as I got older, I understood where she was coming from, and I knew that like this was in her mind her only option, and I totally get it now. Growing up as a teenager and an early adult, I had a very difficult time understanding that. But the more that I grew up, the more mature I became, the more that I wanted to give back to others, whether they were in that situation or felt like they were trapped and feel like they are also going through this and they can't do nothing else about it. The more that like I understood where she came from too.
Yeah, it's amazing how when you take a step back from the situation, whether it's 5, 10 years, it gives you a much different perspective on things. And I think, yeah, maturity makes such a big difference because you get to empathize in a way that you can't when you're younger and don't have the same experiences yet.
Absolutely. And it was a drive for me. The older I got now, the more that I want to share with others, like, you can do this. You have goals in your mind. It doesn't matter how old you are, what your circumstances are, you can still accomplish what you want in life. And regardless of that, you cannot always be a victim of your situation. You have to look past that. You survived that. Now use your experience and what you went through to fuel your goals and your dreams in life.
Right. So it's reminding people that their past doesn't have to define them, that they can go through those experiences and shift the path that they're on. They don't have to stay on the same path.
Yes. And I'm very passionate about that because, there have been a lot of people in my life growing up and even now and that have been they have been in mentorship roles towards me. And I've seen them, they have inspired me and they have also been kind of my side cheerleader, cheer me on to do what I have to do, like accomplish my dreams and not give up regardless of what's going on and like just keep on going, be focused. And even if something is happening, these are all different lessons in your life and take what you can from them and then move on because dwelling in them is not going to do anybody any good.
No, not at all. And I think you touch on an important part because it's so important to have a strong support system behind you. Like, yeah, you can get through it on your own, but it's so much more challenging to do it that way. And so if you can find people who can be that positive support system for you, it makes such a huge difference.
Yes. And it's amazing. Once you have those people, once you are able to kind of know that they're in your corner, that there's people like they're kind of, expecting you to do well and also like giving you some resources and guiding you in a way, it makes everything much better. It doesn't make it always easier, but it makes it better to go through life and do this.
Yeah. And how would you say that your experiences when you were younger, how did that affect the decisions you made in your own life when it came to relationships and that sort of thing?
So to be honest, I feel like I'm still kind of reaping the negative effects of that in my own marriage from time to time. My father my mom and my father, thank God, split up, but it was way after like we left the house and everything else. But he was a very controlling person. And in my, I knew for sure that this is not what I wanted in life. I'm like, I don't want anyone ever controlling me or telling me what to do because that's not the way it's going to be. So even now, like with my husband, sometimes he'll suggest something and I will react in a way that I feel like he's trying to control me. And that might not be his original intention because he's not doing that. But in my mind, like I need to take a step back sometimes and understand where he's coming from. So it does bring up a lot of challenges in that sense. I react more quickly than I probably should, only because of like my own experience in the past. And I feel like if I let that go and I don't say something about it, then that could amount to something worse later on.
Absolutely, a confessor. But I think that having that awareness of the fact that that is a trigger is so huge because I think that a lot of times we go through life and we're not aware of those triggers. And so we blow up at things. The same themes will pop up and our reaction will always be the same, but it'll never necessarily be justified because
Yeah.
because the other person doesn't know necessarily our history or why that triggers us the way it does, or the meaning behind how you're receiving the message. That being aware of that is so important, so that you don't react in the same way, or even if you do, that you realize where it's coming from, so that you can manage the consequences of reacting in a negative way.
Yes. And it's huge, I mean, I try. I try to be more conscious and know that, that's not his intentions. We've been together for more than 10 years. So I know where he's coming from. He's not going to try to be a controlling person all of a sudden now. And I know that that's not, his original intentions at all. But again, unfortunately, like there's still part of me that goes back to like being 7, 8 years old and seeing how my father treated my mother and how she let it happen for so long that, it made a huge negative impact in her life, and she's still building herself up now after she's like 50 years old, and I'm happy that she's able to do that, but I don't want to have to ever go through that and feel like at 50 something years old, this is where I really start to live my life.
Right. Yeah. Samary, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far in your experience?
My biggest lesson, I would say, I mean, just to be inspired and not give up in life, period. I think often we let our circumstances, like I said before, control kind of what we're doing and dictate what we're going to do and not pursue. And I feel like that has been like my lesson in life. Like, not going to give up. I don't care what statistics say about kids who grow up in like households where there's drugs and like you see prostitutes and you see like, all this negativity going on around you. Like that's not going to make me do that. And that I'm going to do the total opposite. And a lot of times we get kind of grouped and people assume just because we lived a certain way or because we had those experiences that we're going to be the same way that we grew up in. And that's not true at all.
No, I think that that's a big lesson because we always have a choice. And I think that sometimes we can be so caught up in our experiences that we forget that we can choose to react differently. We can choose to do things differently. And so we just get caught up in maintaining that status quo, when if we're not happy with the status quo, we can always do something about it. It's not like we can change it overnight, but we can do little things in a different way and get different results from it.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I went with my business and why I started like my nonprofit and everything else in my life, because I felt that other people needed to hear that. I don't always share my story, like that's not the first thing I tell everyone, my past and my history and all of that. But it is something that I feel that when the time is right, I do need to share it sometimes. And I need to let them know, like, yes, I could have, like, I went to college, I did what I had to do, but my past wasn't all like beautiful. It wasn't like all great and wonderful and everything was set up for me. So I love to share that part of me when it's a good, time, and then give them that push that they need. Like, listen, if I did it, you could do it too. And like, there's plenty of other people who have also done it and have gone through like even worse things and other experiences that are still going after their dreams and are still accomplishing amazing things in life.
Right. Yeah. And I think that reminding ourselves of that is so important. And I may have mentioned this in another podcast interview, but I remember seeing Bob Proctor in 2009, and it was a full day event and it was great. But near the end, he gave everybody in the room a copy of the book, a copy of the chapter on persistence from the book Think and Grow Rich. And he suggested that we find an accountability partner and read it to one another for 30 days. And, you wonder why he would ask you to read a chapter in a book for 30 days. But it was so great because I did it with the person I actually went to the event with. And by the end of it, we could, recite the chapter without even really looking at the book he gave us. But I think the whole point of it was to sort of embed in your brain that, there are people who have gone through really challenging times to make their goals a reality. But they didn't give up. They persisted, and they found a way to make those goals a reality. And I think that that's such a huge reminder for people, is that, everybody's going through something at some point in their life. And we have a choice. We get to choose whether or not those events define us, they swallow us whole, or we use it as a course correction, right? We allow it to lead us in a different direction that may bring us closer to where we really want to be. And I think that when we can realize that and, really be patient with ourselves and with the process, that we can get there. Because again, I feel like a lot of these circumstances, the negative circumstances didn't happen overnight either, right? They were a progression. And so I think to undo those things, or the programming that's created from those negative experiences, that's going to take time too. And I think that we're in this society of instant gratification, so that everybody wants everything to happen, by the end of today or tomorrow.
Yes.
When it's sort of unrealistic. And I think that, we have to learn how to be patient again, and that, like, not everything is a Netflix, binge watching season,
Yes.
right? That sometimes you have to, take it one step at a time, and and just be patient and know that what's meant to be is coming to you, but you're not in control of when it's all going to happen.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that you say that, because I recently just wrote a blog post. I haven't published it yet, but it's about that. It's about how we're very impatient. We want to have things right then and there. We want to put a quote unquote plan in motion, and we wanted to see results right away. And Rome wasn't built in a day. And I know that's so cliche, but it really wasn't. So if you're going to be great, if you're going to do great things, if you're going to touch many lives and do the changes that you want to do, you cannot expect it to do it overnight, because it's just not going to happen. Your journey is part of how you're sharing that, and how you're doing that, and how you're influencing and helping those others see that as you're doing it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Samary, what advice would you give to somebody going through something similar in their own life right now? See a young person who maybe, has that troubled childhood and is still struggling to create their own life and not repeat the same patterns.
I think the biggest thing to know is that you deserved better. You deserve to be able to do what you want and what makes you happy in life. And sitting here with these feelings and emotions is not going to make you happy. It's going to make you more sad, angry, or put you back in that place that you were before, in that negative mindset. So knowing that you deserve better, your circumstances are not who you are, and use that as a blueprint to keep going forward, and to give you that push that you need. Just keep looking at it as an experience, and what am I getting from this experience? Not this sucks. It happened to me, and it sucks, and I'm gonna live in it. And no, you do not have to live in it. You have the choice. Ultimately, you have the choice to really move past that, and you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's some good wisdom to remind people of, because it can be so easy to allow those negative circumstances to really swallow you whole, and allow you to feel like giving up on ever having the life that you truly want for yourself. And I don't think that that's why we're here at all.
No.
And I think that for me, the biggest thing that I've realized is that life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. So even this negative, whatever our upbringing was, if it wasn't the ideal upbringing, that happened for a reason, that we needed to go through those experiences, because that's made us the people we are today. And and so to think that there are no mistakes, that everything is happening for us, and just really makes you think about why these things are happening and what can you learn from them. How can this experience make you a stronger, wiser, better person instead of just thinking that it's a sucky situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know,
Completely agree.
yeah, I mean, it's not easy though, to make that shift because, I mean, some of our experiences, whether as children or adults, are really painful ones. And so it's hard to step back and think about the fact that this is happening for a greater purpose, when you're in
It,
it.
yes.
But I think that if you want to get out of it, if you want to feel better, then you have to choose to start to look at why it's happening and how can you benefit from this experience? Because, yeah, like you said, you can allow it to really swallow you whole and to almost feel like you're stuck in quicksand. And I've seen people who get stuck that way for years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so sad to see that, because you know that if they could just get themselves out of it, then they could achieve so many amazing things. So I think we're all capable of achieving awesome things, whether that's, starting your own business, writing a book, doing an inspirational talk, or even just being a mentor, like, being a big brother or big sister, or being a volunteer somewhere. Like, we all have a special gift to share, and we just have to. And I think a lot of times that gift comes out of those negative experiences. I don't think that if you've had like a really happy, awesome, positive childhood, that you're more equipped to help other people. I think that when you when you can, talk about things and not talk about it theoretically, like say I read it in a book somewhere, but to know that you've lived it and you're
Yeah.
talking from your own personal experiences, I think makes such a big difference.
And it's true. It's absolutely true. It's hard. You said the right thing. It's not easy when you're in it. Sometimes you don't even realize how much in it you are, until either somebody like really like tells you like, listen, you have to stop doing that. You have to stop blaming this. And a similar experience happened to me, as I was going through college, and I was blaming like my father and my mom for a lot of the choices that I made. And there weren't like horrible choices, but I could have chosen to do something differently. My husband was a good person to tell me, that's not, it's not their fault anymore. It's past that. You need to be able to like, just know that you are now in control of this. They cannot control what you're doing right this very moment. So like, take ownership over that, take ownership of that control and what you're doing in that moment.
Yeah. Samari, thank you so much for sharing your story and the lessons you learned, and for providing the advice that you did. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, thank you so much for having me.
So yeah, again, I appreciate your time. And for those of you listening who may not be able to refer back to the show notes, you can learn more about Samari, where to find her, and learn more about what she's doing in the show notes, in the links that I will provide. So again, thank you so much, Samari, and I will see you guys next week.